Alright, welcome to my breakdown on how to get the GrandMaster speed killing time at Kerapac of under 2 minutes 15 seconds in a hard mode solo. I'll break down the rotations ability by ability, slowing down the clips if need be, and then I'll play the full speed kill at the end with light commentary. This was a pretty fun GrandMaster kill, and it actually has a fair bit of leeway at the end. If you can get through the first 3 phases playing well, then you'll have a good amount of extra time in the final phase. I got a lot of kills, anywhere from 208 to 212, and more perfect players will even get sub 2s. So even though I'm far from perfect here, 7 seconds of leeway really is a lot when it comes to a GrandMaster kill. This is going to be a melee and magic hybrid kill, so let's start out by looking at my perks, preset, and relics. Relics, I'm using the Conservation of Energy and Berserker's Fury relics. I'll put a picture of my perks on screen, but for the purposes of this kill specifically, I've replaced the Biting slot with the Biting 4 Genocidal combo perk. I will be on a Slayer task for this kill, and I'll lower the task count enough so that Genocidal is giving me either a 3 or a 4% damage increase. In my preset, I'm wearing my best melee gear with Cinderbane gloves and a Dragon Battle Axe equipped. We'll be using that spec at Wars during our pre-build. I have a Masterwork two-handed sword since it has tier 100 stats and I don't yet have a Genesis shard on my Exekill. The perks, however, are identical. I have a quiver with Hydrix bolts and a crossbow with the Karoming 4 perk. I will also be stalling Incendiary shot off of the PVM hub dummies and using Greater Ricochet periodically throughout the fight. I have my magic gear and weapons. We will be using magic gear for phase 2. I have Primal Abyssal Armor Spikes. They're just a tiny damage increase and they really won't make or break the kill. My EOFs are Dragon Claws, Iban Staff, and Dragon Scimitar. We're going to be using the Dragon Scimitar to give us better accuracy on the clones in phase 4. And you do actually want to have the Dragon Scimitar in EOF as opposed to a physical D-Simi, as it will actually do a lot of damage when you're using it with your tier 100 swords. You'll see in my kill it hits like 20,000 damage, but that probably wouldn't happen if you were just using the physical tier 60 version. The last couple of things to note, I have a Vitality Potion, but you could probably swap this out for a Ring of Death. This is intended to give you a little more survivability at the very end of the final phase, so choose whichever one of those two that you prefer. You actually could probably bring both if you could manage with one less food, but this inventory is already pretty cramped, so I'm just using one. Since this inventory is so cramped, I'll be drinking Overload and Weapon Poison at the bank before kills. I'm also using Quorum and Lantadyme incense sticks for increased poison damage and increased potion duration respectively. So there's all the preset notes, let's look at the kill. Start off by using Dragon Battle Axe spec at Wars. Build back up on the crystal and then stall Incendiary shot off of the dummy. Go through the portal, enter the instance, and maintain your stall by using Darkness or Lord of Bones. Dive to the center of the arena and place your dummy. Release your Incendiary shot with Natural Instinct. Use Piercing Shot and then Greater Ricochet. Berserk, then Anticipate to build Adrenaline and charge your Greater Barge. One tick after you use that Anticipate, surge forward so that Kerapac will actually spawn in. Now use Barge on the dummy, followed by Chaos Roar, and then dive back to where the boss will spawn and stall your Dragon Claws. This is going to line up perfectly with the target cycle timing. So target cycle and release your Dragon Claws with Insult on Kerapac. Now brace yourself because this is a very challenging part of the rotation. 4-tick Smoke Cloud and then Dragon Claw 3 times in a row. Hopefully you can remember that. There is actually a little bit of RNG here, whether you crit enough to do 3 Dragon Claws, but from my experience going for this kill, this is probably 70% consistent. After the 3rd Dragon Claw, you use Fury and then Overpower. This is about the time you'll have to walk under Kerapac to avoid spawning a time thread. Use Greater Ricochet, then finish off the phase by using Meteor Strike to refresh your critical strike buff, and then Punish. You also want to make sure that you're still exercising situational awareness here, because depending on your crit RNG, you may still have to add in a Hurricane to phase the boss. Or maybe you crit everything and then you could even skip the Gricko going directly for Meteor Punish. Again, this phase does have a few elements of RNG, so just play it as best as you can. Once you phase though, equip your magic gear, switch your prayer, use Concentrated Blast, Corruption Blast, and then Magma Tempest. Now we're going to wait until the Time Warp action button shows up on screen. If you're able to do so, now is a good time to switch your spell to Exsanguinate. I tend to switch spells a few abilities later, just because that makes it easier for me to focus on the action button right now, but ideally you can do it right now. So just before we get into the crux of this phase, I'm going to show you 2 variations. Optimally, this phase makes use of a stalled Omnipower at the very end of Time Warp, and you walk under Kerapac to prevent a time thread as soon as the Time Warp is ending. That timing is very tight, and it's without a doubt the trickiest part of this whole fight. We are going to cover that method, but I'm also going to show you a very small modification where you can Time Warp a little bit later, making that timing much more forgiving. Let's start with the optimal rotation so you see what I'm talking about. So in the optimal phase 2, we'll use Time Warp right away, wait 1 tick, then cast our Sunshine. Auto attack plus Gricko to put us at high adrenaline. Use Fasoa Spec, Concentrated Blast, Tsunami, and now here's the fun part. Surge and dive far away, out of range of Kerapac, and then cast Omni Power. Since you're so far out of range, the ability is going to be stalled. Time Warp is then going to warp you back into position right next to Kerapac. However, Kerapac is about to launch his Time Thread attack, so now you're going to have to walk under instantly, otherwise the Time Thread will spawn, stun you, and cost you a lot of time, ruining your kill. The only advice I can share here is that you may want to consider zooming in your camera all the way so that you can see precisely where to click under Kerapac. Again, this timing is very tight, and as a trackpad player personally, I definitely struggle with cursor accuracy and speed, so maybe with a proper mouse you'll have an easier time with this than I did. Once you walk under, release that Omni Power with a Wild Magic, and more likely than not, between the Wild Magic hits and the Omni Power hits, you should get enough crits to keep you at 100% adrenaline here, allowing you to use Metamorphosis right away. In your Metamorphosis, you're going to want to use Auto Attack plus Concentrated Blast, then Omni Power. Asphyxiate, but only for 1 global cooldown, and as soon as you can cast another ability, cancel your Asphyx and cast Ivan's Blast. I actually channeled my Asphyx a little bit too long here accidentally, but that's fine. That should phase the boss, then you can build back up with either a Gricko or a Conk and a Bleed. Choose one of those based on your current adrenaline. So now I'm going to quickly show you the slightly modified phase 2 that has a more lenient timing with the Time Thread, and if you don't care about that and you want to skip ahead to phase 3, the timestamp is on screen and in the description. Hopefully you still watched the previous section with the optimal P2, because this is basically the same, just a very small change at the start for comfort's sake. This can actually be a good backup if you don't get enough crits to Sunshine right away. It's also a good option while practicing this rotation until you're comfortable with attempting the optimal P2 and that tighter step under timing. So very simply, at the start of phase 2, instead of using the Time Warp button right away, just do 2 or 3 extra abilities, and it really doesn't matter which ones. I did Combust, Concentrated Blast, and Dragon Breath here, but we're just doing a couple extra abilities here, so the timing of our Time Warp ending is after Kerapac does his Time Thread attack. So after you do those couple of extra abilities, now use Time Warp and do everything exactly the same as the optimal rotation. And then when the Time Warp ends and you get teleported back next to Kerapac, release that Omni with a Wild Magic. Objectively, this is worse and slower than time warping right away, but I have had several 212 and 213 kills with this slower phase 2. I'll just speed this up super quickly so that you can still see it's the same kill, and here I got a 213. Like I said, I'd recommend trying this delayed time warp phase 2 if the step under is too tight with the instant time warp or while you're learning. Phase 3. So hopefully you still have a few seconds left in your Metamorphosis, and while Kerapac is doing his phasing animation, you can build with either Gricko or Conk to high adrenaline. You'll want to use a Soulfire weapon spec here, and try to time it so that if it is a Soulfire that resets and hits instantly, the hits will actually go through when Kerapac is actually attackable again, and not just hit him when he's damage immune. If you do get a Soulfire reset, then Soulfire again. If not, then use Ivan's Blast. From there, you're going to use Limitless, Tendrils, and finish off any remaining time you have in your Fasoa and Sunshine. Once those come to an end your rotation with Tsunami. This should also be around the time that you'll have to step under the boss again. Equip your melee gear, use Gricko to try and get to 120% adrenaline. I think ideally, if you Gricko and equip a melee weapon fast enough, you can actually get to 120% adrenaline, but I usually struggle with that, so I just used a couple of basic defensive abilities here to get adrenaline past 100. Once I do have my desired adrenaline though, I'll use the time warp button again. Berserk, Barge Kerapac, Overpower, Assault, Chaos Roar, and then Dragon Claw. Time Warp is going to end here, and Kerapac should be phased. But if he's not, and he's pretty close to phasing, try and end your phase with Dragon Scimitar spec. It'll do about 20,000 damage, so it can be a good finisher if Claw didn't phase. You still want to be careful not to cast Dragon Scimitar if he did phase, as he's about to fly away, so your Scimitar buff won't actually go through. Instead, if you phased, we're going to use the Scimitar on the first clone. So on the first clone, we'll click to enter our player's clone, Barge the clone of Kerapac, use Dragon Scimitar spec, Hurricane, Assault, and finish with Punish. If you use the D-Simi on Kerapac before phasing, instead do Barge, Claw, Punish. For clone 2, we'll use Overpower, length spec, and then try and finish it off with 1 or 2 basics. My Berserk ran out a little bit earlier than what is ideal had I played better, so I finished off with 3 basics, but that's still fine. If you've made it this far, then you've got a good amount of leeway. For Clone 3, use Meteor Strike to refresh your crit buff, then Gricko to hopefully get the full adrenaline. Use Berserk and your A-Pot, then use Divert. From here on out, there's going to be a little bit of improvisation required to finish this clone and Kerapac, but the goal is going to be to barge this clone, bleed destroy, maybe claw, and then punish. Then you can turn your attention to Kerapac. I'm also a little bit of a noob here, and I made use of the leeway by playing extra safe, so I even used Devotion in most of my kills here. Once you're onto Kerapac, you basically just want to dump everything strong that you can think of. Dump your Overpower, Dragon Claws, Leng Spec, and anything that your adrenaline will allow. Use your Vitpot here, use Vengeance if you can remember, maybe even use your Ring of Death if you brought that. And if you did all of this, then the boss should be dead in under 2 minutes 15 seconds, granting you the GrandMaster Speedkiller achievement. So there was the full breakdown portion of this guide. Let's go ahead and look at the full speed kill with light commentary now. So, starting off at Wars, we're going to be using our Dragon Battle Axe spec, stalling Incendiary Shot, then making our way to the instance. You can maintain that stall by using Darkness or Lord of Bones. Enter the instance, dive into the middle, place a dummy, release Incend with Natural Instinct, Piercing, and then Gricko to get to full adrenaline. Use Berserk, Anticipation, and Surge in, then barge the dummy, Chaos Roar the dummy, dive back towards where Kerapac will spawn, stall Claw, release Claw with Assault, 4-tick Smoke Cloud plus Claw, Claw, Claw. Fury, then Overpower, Gricko if you need to, and then use Meteor Strike and Punish to finish the phase. During the phase transition, equip Magic Gear, Concentrated Blast, Corruption Blast, Magma Tempest, wait for the Time Warp, use Time Warp Sunshine, then Auto Gricko, FSOA Spec, Concentrated Blast, Tsunami, Surge Dive far away, cast Omnipower, that stalls it, walk under Kerapac, release Omnipower with Wild Magic, Metamorphosis here, then Auto Conk, Omnipower, 3-hit Asphyx, Iban's Blast, and that should end the phase. In the phase transition, build a little extra adrenaline, and then also use your Soulfire spec. I got a reset, so I Soulfired here again, otherwise I would use Iban's, then just use Limitless Tendrils. I'm going to finish off my Sunshine with whatever abilities seem strong, then I'll use Gricko to get back to full adrenaline. Equip my melee gear, try and get to 120% adrenaline, so I used a couple defensives. Then Time Warp Berserk, Barge, Overpower, Bleed the Assault, Chaos Roar, and Dragon Claw. My Time Warp ends here and the boss is phased. I couldn't use Desimi on Kerapac, so I'm going to use it on the first clone. I'm going to Barge the first clone, Dragon Scimitar, Hurricane, and then Bleed Assault. The alternate rotation is still showed on screen. Finish the clone with Punish if necessary, then head over to the second clone. Use Overpower, Leng Spec, then finish it with basics as needed. On the third clone, your goal is to use Meteor Strike, Gricko to get to full adrenaline, Zerk, and then from here on out, essentially just improvising whatever the best abilities you can come up with. You could definitely play a little more optimally than what I've done here, but I just wanted to play safely. I make use of Devotion, and then I just use whatever abilities that I can think of that seem strong. So that's things like Chaos Roar, Dragon Claws, Overpower, Leng Spec, Punish. In this kill specifically, I think I did Roar, Claws, Fury, Overpower. And I got myself a 209. So there you have it. That was my breakdown on how I got the GrandMaster speed killing time at Kerapac. If you enjoy high level PvM content like this, subscribe to my channel as I'll be making videos like this for every single GrandMaster combat achievement in the game. Share this video with a friend, leave me a comment. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.